Hey guys, just been watching a reaction video from Retro Faith, 5 games that she doesn't like. I agree with several of them, so I want to talk to you about my particular 5 retro games that I don't like. And I'm going to start with one that I think a lot of people will agree with, and that is bad sports games. Now, I won't say that all sports games are bad, in fact they're not. I really enjoy NHL 2002, for example. I think it's one of my favourite games. Big fan of the St. Louis Blues. Hockey is my sport, and I really enjoy the implementation of hockey in that particular game. But some games are really, really terrible at what they do. And one of those, I'm going to put down these games before I drop them everywhere, in fact. One of those is this one. It's basically just FA Cup football, Amstrad Spectrum. No, this isn't an Amstrad Spectrum. Most versions of this game are Amstrad on one side, Spectrum on the other. This is one of those particular ones from pretty early in its run, where it's just the Amstrad. But it has the Spectrum colouring, by the way. That is not the bar that should be on an Amstrad game. It should be orange. FA Cup football sucks. It feels like it's written in compiled BASIC. It's very slow, it's very clunky. You do almost nothing in it. You pick your teams, your draft for the FA Cup basically, and sometimes you're asked a question, and most of the time that question will not involve anything to do with football, or at least anything to do with the football game that's about to be shown, and then the computer will do whatever it wants, and sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but most of the time, if you know which teams to pick, you win every time. It's a terrible, terrible game. Now, most modern football games are much better than that. In fact, I reviewed, I think it's a year or two ago now, I reviewed the entire FIFA series from the start to the end of the PlayStation 2 run, and a lot of those were great. If you want to play a football game, FIFA 2006, FIFA 10, 12, they're all great. The World Cup one, 2006 World Cup, was pretty good as well. They are good football games. You actually feel like you're doing something because you're playing a game of football. FA Cup football is not football. It's just a basic type-in with delusions of grandeur. And that is what I'm talking about here. Bad sports games do not represent the sport. They don't even represent the idea of watching the sport. It's weird. I mean, I played Football Manager for years. You don't actually play a game of football in that game. You sometimes, in later versions, you see a game of football being played from the sidelines, essentially, because you're the manager. That's a lot of fun. You have influenced that game, even if you're not playing it at that point. But in terrible sports games like FA Cup football, you don't do anything. There's nothing to it. So you might as well not bother. Speaking of might as well not bother, I've got to pick up a game that's just fallen over. Bugs Bunny in Crazy Castle, the series. This one is Crazy Castle 3. There are several of these. Why? They're all the same game. You wander around one screen, essentially, picking up keys to unlock doors, and then you move on and do it again. You know, right back at the start of video games, when no one really knew what a game was yet, and the technology wasn't really there to implement a proper story and a lot of game mechanics. Everyone had to learn how to do that. That's when a game like that would have worked, or maybe an LCD handheld. That's the kind of level that Crazy Castle is on. It is literally one of the worst games I've ever played because there isn't a game here. You occasionally avoid an AI-controlled, well, say AI, a computer-controlled character that wanders around trying to stop you and take your lives while you pick up keys. There's no game there. It's a waste of time. It is literally something to look at while you waste some time. I've tried it many times to try and work out why anyone would like this, and I can't. I literally cannot work it out because there's no game there. So, the Crazy Castle ones, I just don't get it. Let's move on to something else. Now, Faith mentioned wrestling games, and I agree, because wrestling games are on my list as well. I like fighting games. I'm a big fan of Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat's pretty good too. I just don't get the wrestling thing because of one major factor. This is a type of game that is all about fighting, wrestling, grappling, that kind of thing. But the game mechanics don't follow the fighting genre. The fighting style of control would work really well in a wrestling game. Something like the Mortal Kombat or Dead or Alive grappling system. That would work really well in a wrestling game. But the wrestling systems don't use it. They don't utilize the same sort of mechanic. And as a result, it's clunky. It's not implemented properly. The entire thing, if you learn it and get good at it, you can kind of replicate what you see on screen when you're watching wrestling, but it's still not the same. And that's the problem with it. There is a very good fighting mechanic that you could use, and they don't. As a result, you get a game that barely works as a fighting game, barely works as a wrestling game, and barely works as a representation of wrestling as you would see it on TV or watch if you went to an event. It's a failure on all counts. So the wrestling genre could do with a massive overhaul, in my view, to come more in line with the tournament fighting genre, where it would fit so very well. But they don't do it. And that's why I don't like the wrestling games. They just... Now, Faith mentioned that the older 8-bit and 16-bit style where it was kind of side-on, that worked better. Even then, I couldn't stand it. It's just badly implemented. And as a result, I just don't like them. I don't get it at all. I don't see how people can enjoy it. Unless you've already got a deep love of wrestling and you really, really want to play a wrestling game, I can't recommend any of them. Having said that, it's not the only fighting game that I've got on my list, because the Naruto games and things like that... Okay, quick addition, as I'm making the actual video and putting it together. I got the games wrong. It's not Naruto that's the one that I don't like. I get them confused because they're both anime. Super Dragon Ball Z, Budokai Tenkaichi and things like that. They're the ones that I don't like because it goes 3D, it flies, it gets really confusing and it's a bit of a button masher. So it's actually the Naruto ones I like. The art style is great, the combat is great, it's a good set of games. The Dragon Ball Z ones are the ones I don't like. Sorry about that. For similar reasons. Now Naruto was big with young kids, young boys especially, as an introduction to anime. I was already an anime fan before this thing came along. Going right back, I believe my first introduction to anime was 3x3 Eyes. That's how far back I'm talking here. Akira and things like that. I love all of those. Naruto never really clicked with me. Why do I like this? Because this is a three-dimensional fighting game that goes up and down without proper controls on how to go up and down or to move around the arena. It's weird. It takes ages to try and even click into your head what's gone wrong with it, and I just can't get to grips. Perhaps it's me, but I've played a lot of 3D fighters over the years, and I've played a lot of super-powered fighting games as well. These aren't the only ones that I've played, but none of these work for me because it feels less like a fighting game where there's a tactical element to it and a level of skill, and it feels more like a button-mashing mess for very young kids who don't know any better. I'm sorry guys, but in my view, you've got to treat your audience with respect when it comes to creating a game, and this feels like they haven't. This feels like it's just a case of, oh, make them press a load of buttons, so it'll make them feel like they're doing something, and then we'll just get on with it. I'd like to say I was wrong on that. I'd like to say my assessment, based on what I've played, is not right, but that is exactly how it feels to me, and I don't like it as a result. It's just a mess. It really is just an absolute mess. So let's move on to the final one, because this one is another one that's just an abject disappointment to me. Civilization 3. In fact, any Civilization game after 2. Civilization, when I was younger, was top-down and very simple, but very, very in-depth. You could get the basic gist of it very quickly, but take years to master the game. That's the kind of game that I like. It's in-depth, you can come back to it again and again, and it'll be different every time. The later Civilization games cheat. It's as simple as that. I am very, very good at Civilization, and so is my partner. Jennifer is an absolute master. She plays it on the highest difficulty level and she can beat it. That's how good she is at Civilization. Neither of us enjoy the later Civilization games because they go out of their way to give the computer an advantage that you don't have in order to make it a challenge. False difficulty like that ruins games in my view, because the moment I spot that the computer is cheating, I'm out. Absolutely out. I expect to be treated with respect, just like I mentioned with the Naruto one. I expect to be treated with respect when I play a game, and if the computer has been programmed to cheat, then I am not being treated with respect. Therefore, Civilization and all of the later versions, because they all do it, just don't treat me with respect, and therefore I don't like them. I'll stick with Civilization, the original. I've got several copies around me. Civilization 2, picked that up on PlayStation 1. That was a fun one. Not as enjoyable from my point of view as the original, but that's mainly because I haven't sat down and learnt enough of it to really get to grips with its new style and the new tech trees and things like that. I still love the original. But there are my 5 games, and that's why. The majority of them comes down to the same thing. They're not respecting the player. And if they're not respecting the player, why should we play them? That's my view. Anyway, what are your 5 games that you don't like? This has been a retro response to Retro Faith, and she was responding to someone else, and it goes back and back and back. It's a big line, so please join in the conga of talking about games you don't like, and let me know which ones you don't like, either in a video response or in the comments section below. But that's all I've got time for today, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this, and if you did, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends, so that they can see a good discussion on which games we just don't like. And do subscribe for future videos, because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson. You've been watching a response video for GameHammer Extra on the Knob Mouse channel. Bit of a mouthful, I know. And I'll see you tomorrow.